The old Chevy coughed a little as I pulled it off the I-25 ramp into Denver. 6 hours on the road from Boise, and my lower back was screaming with every bump I'd hit since the Idaho state line. I'm Harold, 68 years old, retired from the railroad business, and let me tell you, nothing makes you feel your age like a long drive in a truck older than your grandkids. The sun was dipping low, painting the Denver skyline in shades of orange and gold, and I could already smell the promise of a home-cooked meal waiting at my daughter's place. Emily had called me last week, her voice bright but a little too sharp, like she was forcing the cheer. "Dad, come visit." It's been too long. I couldn't argue with that. 2 years since I'd last seen her, my only daughter. Now 38 and running a small restaurant with her husband, Tom. I missed her. Missed the way we used to talk about everything from fishing trips to her big dreams of opening her own place. So I packed a bag, threw it in the Chevy, and here I was, rolling into their quiet suburban street. I popped the trunk, the hinges groaning like my knees, and hauled out my beat-up suitcase. The weight of it dragged at my arms, a reminder that 40 years fixing locomotives doesn't leave you as spry as you'd like. "Dad!" Emily's voice cut through the evening air, bright but brittle, like a cracked glass. She came down the porch steps of their tidy Denver townhouse, arms open for a hug. But something was off. Her smile stretched too wide like it was painted on, and her eyes darted away from mine, landing somewhere over my shoulder. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, studying her as she closed the distance. At 38, Emily still had that restless energy she'd had as a kid, always moving, always planning. But tonight, her hand shook just a bit as she reached for my suitcase. "Let me get that, Dad," she said, her voice a touch too eager. Her fingers fumbled with the handle, nearly dropping it. "I've got it," I said, keeping hold of the bag. "You okay, Em?" Her eyes flicked to the ground, then back to me, that smile still plastered on. "Fine, Dad, just so glad you're here." She wiped her hands on her jeans, a nervous habit I hadn't seen since she was a teenager asking for the car keys. "Come on, Tom's inside. He's making your favorite. Apple pie, fresh from the oven." The smell of cinnamon and baked apples drifted from the open windows, warm and welcoming, like something out of a memory. Through the glass, I caught a glimpse of Tom in the kitchen, his apron dusted with flour, moving with the easy rhythm of a man who loved feeding people. At least someone in this house seemed genuinely happy I was here. Emily grabbed my arm as we walked toward the door, her grip tighter than it needed to be. "Dad, we need to talk, soon." Her voice dropped, serious, almost urgent. I stopped walking. "Let's talk now." She shook her head, quick, like she was shaking off a bad thought. No, not yet. Get settled first. Long drive, right? We'll eat, catch up, then we'll talk." Her words hung between us, heavy, like storm clouds rolling in. I've spent decades reading people, engineers, foremen, even the occasional con man trying to sell me faulty parts. Emily was broadcasting something, and it wasn't just excitement about her old man's visit. Her hands were still trembling, and she kept glancing back at the house, like she was checking for something or someone. Whatever she wanted to talk about, it wasn't going to be a happy catch-up over pie. The Denver evening air carried the faint scent of rain, mixed with something sharper, something I couldn't quite place. Trouble, maybe. I followed Emily up the porch steps, my suitcase heavy in my hand, and a knot starting to form in my gut. Whatever was coming, I had a feeling it was going to change things. For better or worse, I couldn't say yet. The guest room in Emily and Tom's townhouse smelled faintly of lavender, probably from one of those plug-in air fresheners Emily loved. I hung my flannel shirts in the narrow closet, each one smoothed out with the kind of care you pick up after 30 years of living alone. Margaret, my wife, had been gone 12 years now, taken by a heart condition that snuck up on us like a thief in the night. Since then, keeping things orderly, shirts hung, tools aligned in the garage, kept my mind from wandering to places it didn't need to go. But tonight, Emily's behavior was a splinter under my skin, sharp and impossible to ignore. I set my suitcase under the bed and pulled my blood pressure pills from the toiletry kit. 2 little white tablets in my palm, a reminder that at 68, my body wasn't as forgiving as it used to be. The doctor had warned me about stress, but stress has a way of finding you, doesn't it? Through the window, I caught movement in the backyard. Emily stood by a small herb garden, a cigarette glowing between her fingers. When had she started smoking? She'd always hated it. Used to lecture me about the guys on the railroad crew who chain-smoked during breaks. She paced back and forth, taking quick, nervous drags, her free hand tugging at her dark hair. The careful ponytail she'd worn earlier was coming loose, strands falling around her face like she was unraveling. I pressed my hand against the cool glass, watching my daughter move like a woman carrying a weight too heavy for her shoulders. Something was wrong, really wrong. Last month, she'd called me late at night, her voice tight, talking about cash flow problems at the restaurant. "It's just temporary, Dad," she'd said, brushing off my offer to help. "We've got it under control." But this pacing, this cigarette, this nervous energy didn't look controlled. It looked like someone drowning. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, the springs creaking under me. Downstairs, I could hear Tom humming in the kitchen, the clatter of pots as he finished up that apple pie. The house felt alive with normal sounds, water running, a TV murmuring about the Broncos' latest game. But underneath it all, there was a current, a tension I couldn't shake. Call it instinct, honed from years of dealing with railroad workers who'd try to hide a bad weld or a late delivery. Emily was hiding something, and it was big. "Harold, dinner's ready." Tom's voice carried up the stairs, warm and steady, like he was calling me to a Sunday barbecue. I took one last look out the window. Emily stubbed out her cigarette, lit another one immediately, and kept pacing. Her silhouette glowed faintly in the dusk, a stranger wearing my daughter's face. Whatever was eating at her, we'd face it together. We were family, after all. The dining room smelled like a dream. Tom had outdone himself with a spread of roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and that apple pie cooling on the sideboard, its crust golden and perfect. He'd even set out candles, their flames flickering across the oak table that had been Margaret's pride and joy. "This looks amazing, Tom," I said, settling into my chair. Emily sat across from me, her hands fidgeting with her napkin. Tom poured wine, his movements calm, but I noticed Emily's glass tremble as she took it. A few red drops splashed onto the tablecloth, and she cursed softly, dabbing at the stain like it was a personal failure. "Rough day at the restaurant?" I asked, keeping my tone light but watching her closely. "Something like that," she muttered, not meeting my eyes. Tom jumped in, his voice cheerful. "Oh, you know how it is, Harold. Customers can be picky, suppliers are late half the time, but Emily's keeping it together." He smiled at her, but she didn't smile back. Instead, she cut her chicken into tiny pieces, barely eating. We fell into small talk, my repair shop in Boise, the weather in Denver, Tom's new recipe for cornbread. But Emily was somewhere else, her fork pushing food around her plate, her eyes darting to her phone every few minutes. The rain started outside, a soft patter against the windows, like Denver was whispering its secrets. I was halfway through my mashed potatoes when Emily set her fork down with a sharp clink. "Dad," she said, her voice slicing through Tom's story about a new sous chef. "We need to talk. Now." Tom's smile faltered, his eyes flicking between us. Maybe after dinner," he started, but she cut him off. "No, now." She turned to me, her face pale in the candlelight. "I need money, Dad. A lot of money." I set my fork down slowly, the weight of her words settling in my chest. "How much is a lot?" Her eyes locked on mine, and for the first time all evening she didn't look away. $1.5 million. The number hit me like a freight train. I stared at my daughter, searching for a hint that this was a joke, but her face was dead serious, her jaw tight. "Are you out of your mind, Emily?" My voice came out rougher than I meant. $1.5 million? For what? She leaned forward, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "The restaurant's in trouble. Deep trouble. We borrowed money to keep it afloat, and now they want it back. With interest. A lot of interest." "Who's they?" I asked, my voice low, but my mind already racing. Tom was staring at his plate, like he wished he could disappear into it. Emily ignored my question, pressing on. "Dad, I've done the math. Your repair shop's worth at least $700,000 to the right buyer. The house in Boise, another $500,000. Your savings, your retirement account, it's enough. You could help us." "You're asking me to sell everything," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Everything I've built since your mother died. Everything that keeps me going." Emily's face twisted, a mix of desperation and something sharper, something like anger. "It's not just about you, Dad. This is serious." "Life and death serious? Life and death?" I pushed back from the table, the chair scraping against the hardwood. "What kind of trouble are you in, Emily? Who did you borrow from?" She shook her head, her voice rising. "That doesn't matter. What matters is I need the money, and I need it fast. You're the only one who can help." Tom finally spoke, his voice soft, pleading. "Emily, let's slow down. Harold just got here. Maybe we can figure out another way." But Emily cut him off, her eyes still on me. "There is no other way, Tom." "Dad, I'm your daughter. Your only daughter. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It means everything," I said quietly, my heart twisting. "But it doesn't mean I'm going to burn down my life to fix yours." The candles flickered, the room suddenly too small, too hot. Emily's face crumpled, and for a moment, I saw the little girl who used to cry when she lost a fishing lure in the river. But then her expression hardened. "I can give you $250,000, I said, the words heavy in my mouth. "Cash, no questions." "But that's my limit." Emily laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. $250,000? Dad, that's nothing. That's an insult to the people we owe. Then you shouldn't have borrowed from them, I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. Tom's hands were shaking now, his napkin twisted into a knot. "Emily, please," he whispered. This isn't fair to him, but Emily wasn't listening. She stood, her chair scraping back, and leaned across the table, her voice shaking with rage. "You never supported me, Dad. Never. High school plays, you missed them for work. My college graduation, you left early for a client meeting. And now when I'm begging for help, you offer me scraps." Her words cut deep, each one a knife twisting in old wounds. I stood too, crossing my arms, years of dealing with tough customers keeping my voice calm. "That's not true, Emily, and you know it. I worked to give you a life, paid for your college, your first car, your wedding. Those scraps are what kept us afloat after your mom died." Tom was crying now, silent tears streaking down his face. He reached for Emily's hand, but she pulled away. "You know what Mom would say?" Emily's voice was a hiss. "She'd tell you to help your daughter. She'd say family comes first." The mention of Margaret hit me like a punch, but I didn't flinch. "Your mother would also tell you to own your mistakes," I said. "You made this mess, Emily, not me. Enough." Tom's voice cracked like a whip, surprising us both. He stood, his face flushed, hands trembling. "Both of you, stop it. You're tearing each other apart, and it's not helping." His eyes were wet, but his voice held a strength I hadn't expected. "Harold, you're exhausted from the drive. Emily, you've been a wreck for weeks. Let's all take a breath, sleep on it, and talk tomorrow." I looked at Tom, really looked at him, and saw the toll this was taking. His shoulders were slumped, his apron still dusted with flour from a pie he'd made to welcome me. Emily was his world, and now that world was cracking. "Tom's right," I said, my voice softer now. I'm sorry for raising my voice, Em. This isn't what I wanted tonight. Emily ran her hands through her hair, her ponytail now a complete mess. For a moment, she looked like the little girl who'd cling to me during thunderstorms. Fine, she muttered. Maybe we all need a break. She turned and headed for the stairs, her footsteps heavy, like each one carried the weight of her anger. Tom started clearing the table, his movements mechanical, like he was trying to hold himself together. Go get some rest, Harold, he said quietly. I'll clean up. I watched him stack plates, his hand steady despite the tears. This man, who'd married my daughter and built a life with her, was caught in the middle of something he didn't fully understand. The pie sat untouched on the sideboard, its sweet smell now cloying in the tense air. What should have been a warm family dinner had turned into a battlefield. I headed for the stairs, my knees aching with every step, my mind churning with questions. What kind of trouble was Emily in, and why did it feel like the worst was yet to come? The stairs creaked under my weight as I made my way back to the guest room, the lavender scent now feeling more like a mask than a comfort. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands resting on my knees, feeling every one of my 68 years. The fight with Emily had left a hollow ache in my chest, like a bruise that wouldn't show but hurt all the same. I pulled my wallet from my back pocket, the leather worn soft from years of use, and flipped it open. Margaret's photo smiled up at me, her eyes crinkling the way they did when she laughed at one of my bad railroad puns. 12 years gone, and I still talked to her when things got heavy. What do I do, Maggie? I whispered. How do I fix this with our girl? The silence didn't answer, but her face brought back memories. Emily at 8, her pigtails bouncing as she ran to me with a fish she'd caught, proud as anything. Emily at 16, practicing her lines for the school play in our living room, her voice full of dreams. Somewhere along the way, that girl had gotten lost, tangled up in something dark enough to make her ask for $1.5 million like it was pocket change. Downstairs, I heard the soft clink of dishes as Tom kept cleaning, probably trying to make sense of the mess we'd made at dinner. The rain had picked up, drumming against the windows, a steady rhythm that matched the unease in my gut. I tucked Margaret's photo back into my wallet, my fingers lingering on it for a moment. Maybe Emily just needed time to cool off. Maybe we could talk this out, find a way to help her without tearing down everything I'd built. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Emily stood there, her ponytail gone, her hair loose and messy around her shoulders. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying, but her voice was steady. Dad, I'm sorry, she said, stepping into the room. I was awful at dinner. Said things I didn't mean. Blamed you for stuff that wasn't your fault. Her words hit me harder than her anger had. For a moment, she was my little girl again, the one who'd sneaked downstairs after a tantrum to apologize, her face all scrunched up with guilt. We both said things, I said, keeping my voice gentle. It's been a long day, she nodded, twisting her hands together. Can we start over? Maybe go somewhere tomorrow, just you and me? There's this place, the Rusty Spoon Diner, not far from here. Nothing fancy, just good coffee and burgers. We could talk, really talk. Like we used to. Her eyes were hopeful, almost pleading, and it stirred something in me. A flicker of hope that maybe we could find our way back to each other. It's late, Em, I said, glancing at the clock. Past 10 already, but her face fell, just a little, and I couldn't stand it. All right, I heard myself say. Sounds good, sweetheart. Let's do it. Her smile lit up the room, erasing the tension from dinner, at least for a moment. She stepped forward and hugged me, her arms tight around my shoulders. Thank you, Dad, she whispered. This means everything. I hugged her back, feeling the warmth of her, the solid reality of my daughter in my arms. For the first time since I'd arrived in Denver, I felt like maybe we could fix this, whatever it was. Get some sleep, I said as we pulled apart. We'll talk tomorrow. She nodded, her smile softer now, and headed back to her room. I listened to her footsteps fade, the house settling into its nighttime quiet. The rain kept up its steady beat, and I lay back on the bed staring at the ceiling, hoping I hadn't just agreed to something I'd regret. The Rusty Spoon Diner was everything you'd expect from a place that hadn't changed since the Carter administration. Red vinyl booths, a jukebox in the corner playing Elvis Presley's Can't Help Falling in Love, the smell of frying bacon and fresh coffee thick in the air. Neon signs buzzed above the counter, casting a warm glow over the black and white checkered floor. It was the kind of place where regulars lingered over bottomless cups of coffee, swapping stories about the old days. Emily led me to a booth near the window, her step lighter than it had been last night. "This place has the best milkshakes in Denver," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Remember when we used to make them at home? You'd let me sneak extra ice cream when Mom wasn't looking." I chuckled, the memory warming me more than the coffee the waitress set in front of us. "You always wanted chocolate syrup on everything. Used half the bottle once, and your mom nearly had a fit." Emily laughed, a real laugh, the kind I hadn't heard from her in years. For a moment, it was like we were back in our old kitchen in Boise, just the two of us, planning our next fishing trip. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with a name tag reading Clara, refilled our coffees with a practiced flick of her wrist. She had sharp eyes, the kind that missed nothing, and a no-nonsense air that reminded me of the foreman I'd worked with on the railroad. "You folks need anything else?" she asked, her voice warm but with an edge, like she was sizing us up. "We're good, thanks," Emily said, her smile still bright. But I noticed her glance toward the door, quick, almost nervous. She pulled her phone from her pocket, checked it, then set it face down on the table. "So, Dad," she said, leaning forward, "tell me about the shop. Still fixing those old locomotive parts?" We fell into easy talk, the kind I'd missed more than I realized. I told her about a tricky valve repair I'd done last month, how one of my old clients still sent me Christmas cards every year. She shared stories about the restaurant, the chaos of a busy Saturday night, the regular who always ordered the same meatloaf sandwich. It felt good, normal, like we were rebuilding something we'd lost, but then I saw it again, her eyes flicking to the door, her fingers tapping the edge of her coffee mug, the way she checked her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. "Everything okay, Em?" I asked, keeping my voice light, but my gut tightening. "Perfect," she said, too quickly, her smile flashing like a neon sign. "Just enjoying this. You know, it's been a while since we've done this, just you and me." She raised her coffee mug, like a toast. "To second chances." I clinked my mug against hers, but the warmth in my chest was starting to fade. Something wasn't right. The jukebox switched to Hound Dog, and the diner buzzed with the low hum of conversation, forks clinking against plates. But Emily's nervous energy was like a current under the surface, pulling me towards something I couldn't yet see. "Excuse me for a sec, Dad," she said suddenly, grabbing her phone. "Need to make a quick call. Probably Tom checking in." She slid out of the booth, her movements jerky, and headed toward the back of the diner, where a sign pointed to the restrooms. I watched her go, her ponytail swinging, her phone pressed to her ear before she even reached the hallway. The diner felt quieter without her, the Elvis song filling the space between my thoughts. I sipped my coffee, trying to shake the feeling that I was missing something. Clara, the waitress, was wiping down the counter, her eyes flicking toward the back where Emily had gone. She moved with a purpose that didn't quite match the casual diner vibe, like she was watching for more than just empty plates. I leaned back in the booth, the vinyl creaking under me, and tried to focus on the good, the laughter, the memories, the hope that maybe Emily and I could find our way back to each other. But deep down, I knew better. The rain outside had stopped, but the storm was coming. I just didn't know how close it was. The Rusty Spoon Diner hummed with the kind of easy rhythm you only find in places where time seems to stand still. The jukebox had switched to blue suede shoes, and the smell of sizzling burgers mixed with the faint sweetness of spilled soda. I sat alone in the booth, my coffee cooling in its chipped ceramic mug, watching the door where Emily had disappeared to make her call. Her absence left a quiet space, like the moment before a train whistle cuts through the night. My gut was telling me something was wrong, but I pushed it down, trying to hold on to the warmth of our earlier talk, the laughter over old fishing trips, the hope that maybe we could fix what was broken between us. Clara. The waitress was back at the counter, wiping it down with a rag. Her movements precise, almost military. Her sharp eyes kept flicking toward the back of the diner, where Emily had gone, and then to me, like she was measuring something. I caught her gaze, and for a split second she held it, her expression unreadable. Then she set the rag down and walked over, her steps deliberate, her apron swaying slightly. "More coffee, hon?" she asked, her voice warm but with an edge, like she was testing me. I shook my head, my fingers tightening around the mug. "I'm good, thanks." She lingered, her hands resting on the edge of the table, and I noticed the faint scar across her knuckles, the kind you get from a life that hasn't always been kind. "You sure?" she said, her voice dropping lower, almost a whisper. "Because you don't look like a man who's good." I frowned, caught off guard. "What's that supposed to mean?" Clara glanced toward the back of the diner, then leaned in closer, her voice barely audible over the jukebox. "Listen to me, Harold," she said, and the use of my name sent a chill down my spine. I hadn't told her my name. "We need to talk. Now." Before I could respond, her hand clamped onto my forearm, firm but not painful, her grip carrying the kind of authority that made you listen. Her eyes locked on mine, and the friendly waitress was gone, replaced by someone harder, someone who'd seen things most people don't come back from. "Your daughter was in here this morning," she said, her words sharp and urgent. "With 3 men. I overheard them talking about taking you out, permanently." The words hit me like a derailment, sudden and catastrophic. My mouth went dry, and for a moment, the diner's noise, clinking plates, Elvis's voice, the hum of conversation, faded to nothing. "What?" I managed, my voice sounding foreign, hollow. "That's impossible." Clara's grip tightened, her eyes never leaving mine. "It's not. I spent 15 years as a cop before I took over this place. I know trouble when I see it, and those men. They're trouble, the kind that doesn't leave loose ends." She reached under the counter, pulling out a small tablet, the kind used for taking orders, but this one showed a grainy security feed. "Look for yourself," she said, tilting the screen toward me. My blood turned cold. There, on the footage, was Emily, standing in the diner's parking lot that morning, her ponytail unmistakable. She was talking to 3 men who looked like they'd walked out of a bad dream. One was tall, wiry, with a face that didn't smile. Another was built like a linebacker, his hands flexing like he was itching for a fight. The third had a quiet menace, the kind of calm that comes before a storm. Emily handed the tall one an envelope, her movements quick, practiced. "Like she'd done this before. That's Mitch Carter." "Danny Ruiz and Vince Malone?" Clara said, her voice steady but heavy with concern. "Local muscle. They handle debt collection, intimidation, and worse. Much worse." I stared at the screen, my heart hammering, as Emily gestured toward the diner, her face animated, urgent. The tall one, Mitch, nodded, checked his watch, and the 3 men split up, moving with the kind of coordination that screamed planning. "This can't be happening," I whispered, my voice breaking. Clara's expression softened, just for a moment, but her grip didn't loosen. "It is, Harold. I heard them talking. Your daughter owes serious money to serious people. and she's betting your life insurance will clear her debt faster than your savings." The words sliced through me, each one a betrayal I couldn't comprehend. Emily, my little girl who'd once cried because she thought her goldfish was lonely, planning my murder. A memory flashed, unbidden, sharp as a knife. We were fishing at the lake, Emily maybe 10, her rod dangling over the water. She'd grinned at me, her face sunlit, and said, "Dad, if I sold you, I could buy a whole boat, right?" I'd laughed, ruffled her hair, told her she'd need a bigger boat for a guy like me. Now, that innocent joke twisted in my gut, a sick foreshadowing of the truth Clara was laying bare. "What do I do?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Clara's answer was immediate, her cop instincts kicking in. "You get out, now, through the kitchen window, while they're still setting up outside." She slid a small pocket knife across the table, its handle worn but solid. "Take this, and don't go back to your daughter's house tonight. Find somewhere public, somewhere safe. On the tablet." The security feed showed the 3 men now positioned around the diner. Mitch near the front door, Danny by the side exit, Vince lurking near the back alley. They were closing in, a net tightening around me. Emily was still in the back, probably stalling, waiting for her plan to unfold. "Why are you helping me?" I asked, pocketing the knife, my fingers numb. Clara's eyes flicked to the screen, then back to me. 20 years ago, a man I barely knew pulled me out of a bad spot during a bust gone wrong. Saved my life. I've been paying it forward ever since. Her voice softened, but her resolve didn't waver. And because some things are just wrong, no matter whose family. I nodded, my throat tight, unable to find words. The jukebox switched to Love Me Tender, the irony bitter enough to choke on. Emily was coming back now, her silhouette moving through the diner's dim hallway, her phone still in her hand, her face wearing that same warm smile she'd used to lure me here. But now I saw it for what it was, a mask, hiding a truth I never could have imagined. "Thank you," I whispered to Clara, sliding out of the booth, my legs unsteady. She nodded once, a quick, sharp motion, then turned back to the counter, wiping it down like nothing had happened. I moved toward the kitchen, my steps slow, deliberate, fighting the urge to run. Running would draw eyes. Running would get me caught. The diner's warmth felt suffocating now. Every laugh, every clink of silverware a reminder of the danger closing in. My daughter, my only daughter, had sold me out, and I had to get out before she realized I knew. The kitchen door swung shut behind me, the diner's warmth replaced by the sharp smell of grease and bleach. The Rusty Spoon's kitchen was a tight space, stainless steel counters cluttered with cutting boards, a grill hissing in the corner, and a narrow window above the sink, barely wide enough for a man my size. My heart was pounding, each beat a reminder of Clara's words. "Your daughter's betting your life insurance will clear her debt." At 68, I hadn't moved fast in years, but right now, speed was all I had. I locked the door behind me, the click loud in the cramped space. The window was my only way out, its frame rusted from years of Denver's wet winters. I climbed onto the counter, my bad knee screaming as I gripped the sink's edge. The porcelain was slick under my palms, and for a moment I thought I'd slip, crash to the tile floor, and give myself away. 68 years old, Harold, I thought. When did you get this fragile? But there was no time for self-pity. Emily was out there playing her part, and 3 killers were circling like wolves. The window groaned as I forced it open, cool night air rushing in, carrying the scent of rain-soaked asphalt. I squeezed through, my jacket catching on the latch, my ribs scraping against the frame. The drop to the alley wasn't far, but it felt like a mile when my feet hit the pavement. Pain shot up my spine, my knees buckling, but I rolled with it, the way I'd learned in basic training decades ago, back when I was young and thought I was invincible. Some instincts never die. The alley was dark, lit only by a flickering security light across the way. Dumpsters lined the walls, their stench mixing with the faint tang of cooking oil from the diner. I crouched low, my breath ragged, and moved along the building's brick wall, staying in the shadows. Through the kitchen's thin walls, I could hear the diner's hum. Elvis still crooning, plates clinking, someone laughing like the world wasn't falling apart. Emily was probably back at the booth now, wondering why her dad was taking so long, checking her phone to make sure her plan was still on track. My daughter. Planning my murder. The thought should have stopped me cold, but instead, it sharpened my focus, like sighting a target through a rifle scope. I reached the alley's edge, where it opened to the diner's parking lot, and pressed myself against the wall, listening. Voices carried on the night air, low and urgent, coming from the front. Emily's voice, clipped and nervous, mixed with others, deeper, harder, professional. I crept closer, using a rusted pickup truck as cover, its bulk shielding me from view. My heart hammered, but my breathing steadied, old training kicking in from my days hauling supplies through rough country, where a wrong move could cost you everything. Peering around the truck's tailgate, I saw them under the amber glow of a streetlight. Emily, her ponytail swaying, talking to the three men from Clara's security footage. Mitch Carter, the tall one, stood with the calm of a man used to giving orders. Danny Ruiz, built like a tank, shifted his weight impatiently. Vince Malone, the quiet one, watched the diner's entrance like a hawk. "You sure he's still inside?" Mitch asked, his voice low but carrying the weight of authority. Emily nodded, too eager, like a kid trying to please a teacher. "He's in the restroom. Probably just taking his time." "You know how old guys are?" Her casual tone twisted something in my chest. Old guys. That's what I was to her now, a problem to be solved. "What's the plan?" Danny's voice was rough, like gravel under boots. "Make it quick." Brake failure, maybe. Or a fall down his shop stairs. "He's 68. Nobody'll ask questions." Emily's laugh was sharp, bitter. "He's stubborn about that shop. Always parks in the same spot out back, tinkers with his truck himself. Creature of habit." Mitch nodded, checking his watch. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m. We meet at the usual spot, confirm his location, then stage it. Brake line cut, or a loose step at his shop? Clean, simple." Emily handed him an envelope, her movements quick, practiced. "Here's the first half," she said. $250,000 now, the rest after the insurance pays out. Over $1 million total shop house savings. I'll double your fee once it's done." My stomach turned, bile rising in my throat. $1 million. That's what my life was worth to her. I memorized every word, every detail, storing it like evidence for whatever came next. Vince spoke up, his voice soft but chilling. "What about the husband? He gonna be a problem?" Emily shrugged, her cruelty so casual it stole my breath. "Tom, he's clueless. Thinks we're just in debt. Won't question the payout. And if he does..." She trailed off, her shrug saying more than words. The threat against Tom, my son-in-law who'd baked a pie to welcome me, hardened something in me. These weren't just killers. They were predators, and Emily was one of them. 7 p.m. tomorrow, Mitch said, pocketing the envelope. "No complications. Leave him in the truck or at the shop. Heart attack, stroke, whatever. Old guy like that? Nobody looks twice." I crouched lower, my knees aching, my hand closing around the pocket knife Clara gave me. No illusions about fighting 3 professionals, but it was something, a lifeline in a world turned upside down. Emily shook Mitch's hand, her smile radiant, like she'd just closed a business deal. "Thank you," she said. "This means everything." The same words she'd used when she hugged me last night. The betrayal cut deeper than the knife in my pocket. They split up, Mitch toward a black SUV, Danny and Vince toward the alley's far end. Emily checked her phone, then headed back to the diner, ready to play the loving daughter again. I had minutes, maybe less, before she realized I was gone. I moved fast, staying low, crossing the parking lot to my Chevy parked 2 blocks away. The keys were still in my jacket, untouched by Emily's scheming hands. Small mercy, The engine started with a low rumble, and I pulled away from the curb, careful not to draw attention. The drive back to Emily's house took 12 minutes, each one a chance to process the impossible. My daughter, my little girl who'd once begged me to keep her goldfish alive, had hired killers to take me out. For money, for a way out of her mistakes. I parked 3 houses down from their townhouse, a trick I'd learned in the service. Never let them see you coming. The street was quiet, porch lights dim, normal people asleep in their normal lives. I used the spare key Emily had given me, the irony bitter as I turned it in the lock. The living room was dark, the faint smell of apple pie lingering like a ghost of the evening we'd planned. Upstairs, Tom and the kids were sleeping, oblivious to the storm Emily had unleashed. I moved to the guest room, packing with the efficiency Margaret had taught me. Shirts folded, pills in the toiletry kit, her photo tucked safely in my wallet. Before I left, I grabbed a notepad from the desk and wrote, my hand steady despite the chaos in my heart. Tom, Emily's in deep trouble. Take the kids to your parents' place tomorrow morning. Don't ask questions, just go. Trust me. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough to keep them safe. I placed the note on the kitchen counter, weighted it with a coffee mug, and slipped out the front door. The Chevy's engine purred as I drove away, leaving behind the daughter I'd raised and the son-in-law I'd grown to love. The highway stretched ahead, a dark ribbon leading back to Boise, to safety, to whatever came next. The I-25 South was a quiet stretch at this hour. Just me, a few truckers, and the occasional late-night driver cutting through the dark. My Chevy hummed along, the headlights carving a path toward Boise, but my mind was still back in Denver, replaying every word, every look, every moment that led to this. Emily's smile in the diner, so warm, so false. The envelope she handed to those men. The way she'd said, "This means everything," like I was nothing more than a means to an end. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white, trying to hold on to something solid in a world that felt like it was crumbling. My phone buzzed in my jacket pocket, Emily's name lighting up the screen. I let it ring, the sound sharp against the hum of the engine. By the time I crossed into Idaho, the missed call counter was at 27. By the time Boise's city limits sign came into view, it was 53. 53 desperate attempts to reach me, to explain, to pull me back into her plan. I turned the phone off and tossed it onto the passenger seat. Silence felt safer. I pulled into my driveway just as dawn started to break, the sky a soft gray streaked with pink. The garage smelled of oil and sawdust, a familiar comfort after the chaos of the night. I sat there, engine off, and pulled Margaret's photo from my wallet. Her smile was still there, unchanged, a reminder of the life we'd built, the daughter we'd raised. "What now, Maggie?" I whispered. "How do I keep going when our girls turned into this?" No answers came, but the question steadied me. Emily had made her choice, but I had mine to make. Protect myself, protect Tom and the kids. Stop those men from cashing in on her betrayal. I was 68, tired in ways sleep couldn't fix, but I was alive. And that meant I had a chance to fight. Life teaches you hard lessons sometimes. Family's supposed to be your anchor, but even anchors can break if the storm's fierce enough. You don't stop loving, but you learn to love smarter, to protect what matters without losing yourself. I'd figure out what came next, one careful step at a time. If this story hit you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do in my shoes? Let me know. And for the next story, check the link on your screen. Thanks for listening.